All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I don't even remember what number we're on, but thanks for coming to our latest of the webinar series with our speakers. 7. Thank you, Pam. Got my friend Brendan Grech is here. He's gonna tell you about his journey and talk about using IO and HR. I'm personally very excited about it. Think it's going to be a great time. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to give you a little bit about Brendan. So he is the founder and principal consultant of Heroic HR Partners, which is a firm dedicated to transforming business through strategic HR and organizational development solutions. Using a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology from Hofstra University, the journey has been fueled by a passion for aligning people, strategy, and business performance. He began his career with a deep dive into the science of workplace behavior and evolved through hands-on HR leadership roles before launching his own consulting practice, which actually just happened recently. So for sure we'll hear about that. Today, Brendan partners with small and mid-sized businesses to drive engagement, profitability, and cultural alignment. So whether he's helping businesses navigate change, build high-performing teams, or create systems that support strength, brings a grounded, human-centered approach rooted in both data and experience. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brendan, and please feel free to engage in the chat during the talk, and we look forward to hearing the conversation. So please, Brendan, take it away.
Thank you, Lee. I feel like I got a lot to live up to after that intro, but I really appreciate it. So it's kind of amazing, and I kind of have to pinch myself that this moment is actually happening right now. Because as you get older, it's like, oh, that was only like a year ago. And now I look back and I'm like, that was almost 20 years ago. So those things get frightening. So, those who are on the younger side, take advantage of it while you can. So as Lee said, my name is Brendan Grech. I am the principal HR consultant for Heroic HR Partners, newly started on March 1st of this year. And I'm going to walk you through the journey that has gotten me to that March 1st date as to why I did that. I think one of the reasons why this story is, I love to tell this story, is that there are so many of us right now that we are going through things, whether we are early in our career and later in our career, does not matter. There's a lot of things that I've had in my career that have been not the best moments, but there's some awesome moments in there. So, with that said, very excited for that. So just a little about me. I am originally from Long Island, New York. It's on Long Island. It's not in Long Island. That's just how we say it. And Ryan's nodding his head because he's from Long Island too. I have my Master of Arts from Hofstra University. Go Hofstra, 2016. Already talked about what I'm doing right now. But I've been working in HR consulting for about 6 years now, in HR for over 12. But I leverage IO and OD in HR consulting. And a fun fact that I don't like talking about is that I made it to the last round of casting for Love is Blind season 1. I still have no idea what the show is about other than the casting call that I was on and how they explained it to me. So if you want to talk about the show, I don't know what's going on. I just know what they told me about what it was going to be. So that's kind of just a little fun fact about myself. So kind of the agenda. I think the discovering IO psychology portion is going to be incredibly relevant to a lot of people in this journey, because it's a lot of us have, it's exactly how we started falling into this. Eventually why I pursued the advanced education portion of that, where I got my experience, and then ultimately building my consultant practice, and then just lessons, impact, and life advice, because you can learn a lot from me, and I don't want this to be the last time that you interact with me. I guarantee you can talk to anybody on this call who's had a conversation with me. I like to have ongoing conversations with people. I love IO people. I love HR people. I love furthering what we do and keeping it alive and making sure more people know about it. So I think it's very important, at least for myself, to make sure that I'm trying to help our community as much as we can so more people will know about it. So where it all began. So for my undergrad, I went to SUNY Farmingdale in Farmingdale, New York. This was prior to them having now they have an applied IO psychology program. I believe they started that, and I'm going to date myself now. They started that for the graduating class of 2012, but I graduated in 2010. So I didn't really want to put off graduation for 2 years. So I kind of went through a different program, but that allowed me to really focus on psychology courses. I think I had enough for a master's, but they just, sorry, bachelor's, but they didn't have the program set up, so I couldn't do the applied internships. So, I had taken the intro to psych course because I think I was originally going for a associate's degree in business management or something along those lines. And I really liked the first intro to psych course I took social psych, took some other courses, and then I really, where the light bulb started to go off about psychology is where I took abnormal psychology with Dr. Michael Goodstone. Um, the way he taught was like, that's the teacher that you have when you're in college, where it's like, I don't care what this person is teaching. I just want to take another course with them because I know I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to get pushed and I'm really going to enjoy myself for the semester. So I really liked that abnormal psych course. So I was like, okay, next semester is coming up and I'm signing up for classes, and let's see what he's got offered. So I knew about this. Farmingdale has a 100, 200, 300 level course. 300 is their highest bachelor's degree level. So I signed up for this 300 level course called IO Psychology. I don't know. It's psychology. What could this possibly be? All I know is I really like this guy. I like the way he teaches and I like the way he does things. So at that point, I didn't know what to expect. I'm kind of thinking, okay, I like the clinical aspect of things, but one of the first 2 or 3 classes, he kind of talks about like what IO psychology is, and if you go down this track versus the clinical track, how much money you can make and how you can still impact people using psychological principles, but it's not somebody sitting in a chair telling you about their problems. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm talking as somebody who definitely wanted to go down that path, and it's still something I think about to this day because Dr. Michael Goodstone is a dual degreed PhD in IO, but he's also a licensed psychologist. So it was always attractive to me, and I just loved the way that he did things. So that's kind of where I really started to get into IO and start to learn more about it. Then he taught another course called organizational behavior. So this is where I talk about this project that you see on this slide. So the term project that we had was that you could take either a real work scenario that you had, or you can make one up, and you take, some sort of approach from the theory of like org behavior, org development, all those types of things, and you start to, fix some of these problems that happens at an organization. And at the time, I was working for Lowe's Home Improvement. That's how I paid the bills while I was going for undergrad and further beyond that. But I looked at a lot of issues that were going on in the organization, and Dr. Goodstone had said, well, you can look at tactfully taking on each issue, solving for it, like processes, doing those sorts of things. But he's like, you might get much more out of this if you just try to take an overall cultural perspective and start to change the way that, and again, it's a corporate setting, but each corporate store has their own culture that's still like any other organization decided from the top down. And he's like, I really think you'll enjoy more of that, taking that approach, and it'll really start to shift your mindset in a different way. And boy, did that project pay off, because that exact project was exactly what I needed, where I really started to get into looking at things from an organizational culture perspective and really starting to learn exactly how work that I do up to today. So this really sparked this passion for understanding people at work. So, really started to use that really early on in my career, even without IO roles. So I kind of had taken some time off. I had some family things going on at the time. So I took a couple of years off before I returned back to school, ultimately going to Hofstra University to get my master's in IO psychology. So Hofstra is also an applied program. So if you go to Hofstra, you will be set up with an internship, or you will find your own internship, and you will be, applying the practices that you learn in classwork, and be able to use it for the work that you do. So, the key courses for me were organizational development. I just always had a huge passion for org development, really learning, diving deep down into theory. Um, but I want to go back for a second. I think a lot of when we're deciding if we want to go for the master's or not, we're still basing a lot of things off of the experience that we had in our bachelor's. Like, I don't want to take that 101 course in this, and I don't want to take that course in that. And then I had a good conversation with one of my friends, and she's like, that's not what happens when you go to a master's program. When you go to a master's program, the meat and the potatoes is what you get. You don't have to do those side courses to get there. So everything that you're learning is going to be stuff that you want to learn and stuff that you want to apply. So that's really where I started to take that deep dive into, okay, this is what I want to do. So sorry, this is just the way my mind works. So I'm skipping back ahead now. So training and development, great course. First half of that semester, also taught by Michael Goodstone from Farmingdale. So again, the way that he teaches and the reason why I love it so much and why I kept going back into classes with him is it was actual ways to apply the things that you are learning into the real world. Because I think a lot of what happens when we are going for our master's degree or in our undergrad or anything like that, we're learning stuff, but we don't know how to apply it. Like a lot of that is in, I think back to high school where we're learning some math trigonometry and it's like, when am I ever going to use this? Or it's funny, like it used to be, well, you're not always going to have a calculator on you. Like now we have cell phones. Now we always have a calculator on us. So, but that same exact principle of like, where am I going to be able to apply this is one of the most important reasons why we go and pursue that advanced education is to take that next step. So this is really where I started to take a lot of that theory and apply it to different business outcomes. And I will just tell you, like, being able to take that, turn it into how you drive profitable outcomes for the organization that you work for, an organization you're consulting with, is really going to get you way further ahead than others that are just not quite grasping the entire picture on that. So that's just an important thing I want to make sure I touch on. So I have had this conversation with at least 3 people already that I see on this call, but I've had it with God knows how many else. We go through things in our IO career where we are so focused on, I want the IO title, I want to do the IO role, I want this sexy job and these sexy responsibilities that really start to leverage. And so I call myself, yeah, I'm in a true IO psychology job. And I used to be the same way. I used to go on Indeed and type in IO psychology and see what jobs popped up. Spoiler alert, that it's not the way to look for a job. If you're still doing that, for the love of God, reach out to me and we'll find a better way. Reach out to anybody on this call and we can find a better way. But there are so many things that you can leverage within the IO space that I think is so important that we can touch on. So I had talked about my first job working at Lowe's in customer service. There are so many different techniques that I used that were IO related that I didn't realize were IO related until later on. But I was like, oh yeah, that was sprinkled in there. So, I always strive myself on, like, it's true. If you're in New York, it's just a very different world. It does not matter what part of New York, because I've also met people from upstate, which I fondly refer to as actually Canada. It's not really New York, but I digress. But they still have the same mentality. It's honestly like a Northeast thing, is that you have to be the fastest and the best. It's like a competition thing, and we will turn the smallest thing into something. But it stuck with me that drive, being faster, being quicker, because if you can't do things fast, you're going to lose. You're not going to have a job, and you're not going to be able to do things. So I go back to like time and motion studies where we originally, like, that's a lot of where IO psychology was first founded. So my first job at Lowe's was I was a loader. So I would go back, pull orders from the back, and then I would load them into customers' cars. So I would be handed one ticket, and then somebody would get in customer service would go, when you come back, have another ticket for you. And I said, if the box is this small, why am I doing them one at a time? Now, there's two reasons why I didn't want to do that. Number one, I wanted to get all my work done so I could just stand around and do nothing and BS with my coworkers. But it also made me way faster and better than everybody because I didn't want to have to take 2 or 3 trips back where I'm like, I can put all this stuff on a cart, pull another cart behind me and do these things faster. So for me, that was a huge process improvement where if one person is pulling one order, grabbing it, going to the back, grabbing another one, I mean, I would even pick up the phone, call customer service and say, hey, what's the order? What's the name? Where is it? I'll go pull this while I'm back here. So those are like little process improvement things where it's like, sure, it's more of an operation sort of thing, but there is so much IO because I was trying to find a better way to do things. When I was in grad school, I worked as a security officer for one of the local towns in New York. Now, the reason why this job is so relevant is that I did a lot of training and development because my supervisor at the time trusted me with training all the new hires. Because if you've ever worked in a government union job, there is the way you're supposed to do it, and then there's the way everyone else does it, or everyone's individual way that they do things. So, my supervisor understood that I trained to the standard. Like, if the standard is this, this is the way we train things. So, it gets to a point in that training and development process where it's like, look, you can put your own spin on this and kind of figure out your own way to do these things. But at the same time, this is how we train to the standard. As long as you are getting this standard done, that's fine, but you can't cut corners. Like you have to work to this finish line. You can't stop before the finish line. You have to work to this finish line. And I didn't realize how much like training and development pieces are really impactful into this part-time job that I'm doing while I'm in grad school, because who would ever think about that working as a security officer? And the other one that I have in there that I've really started to leverage now is that I worked for my family's business doing operations roles, some HR stuff, some sales stuff, and then also some logistics stuff. Working for a small family business that is family owned has its problems, especially when it's your family. But it has a lot of great things to it too. So there was unfortunately a death in our family, and not gonna mention any names, but at the time it was really hard. So I had to like effectively run a lot of the business for this time period, which was fine. But I'm running a family business at 23, and this is before I had my IO degree. So learning a lot of things trial by fire. And those things can be really scary. But then now I look forward and we're fast forwarding 10 years into me owning my own business. Those things aren't scary anymore because I did them already and I knew it and I've already lived through the anxiety of what that looks like. So I've been on this quest to read 100 books for this year. I think I finished number 38 the other day and I'm on 39, 40, and 41. I'm doing like this 3-book read. One of them's like a 1 page a day sort of book for 365 days. And then one of the other ones that I'm doing is Cotter's book on change, which is a phenomenal book, especially when you don't have to read it out of a textbook and it's actually his thoughts from the book. It's a great book. But also at the same time, I'm also doing some stuff based off of mindfulness and stoicism. And there's a lot of things that Stoics teach us about what we should be doing and how we should be acting and how we should be doing better for each other. So being the qualities of a good human being. And I look at a lot of those principles, and the reason why I've really liked the theories and the philosophy so much is like, this is what we do as IO. We want to create a better place. Sometimes we want to take some credit for it because we just want to further the initiatives and want more people to know about it. But at the same time, sometimes we just kind of want to be on the sidelines and not let people know about it. But those are some important things I really wanted to touch upon about that. So now we're skipping ahead. So a lot of my more HR practitioner stuff was done in the Atlanta metro area when I moved off of Long Island. Again, it's on Long Island, not in Long Island. So I'd taken on a couple different roles in HR, being an HR manager. And then ultimately, I had seen a job with an HR consulting firm that I really wanted to work with ever since I had started. Moved to Atlanta, like really liked what they had to present and the HR consulting model that they had and getting that hands-on experience. When I had originally got into IO and the story that Dr. Goodstone would share, it was a lot of on-site stories. It wasn't like no exciting story starts with, so I logged on to my computer. I'm just telling you right now, there can be some exciting stories like that, but for the most part, there is an exciting story. It's I had to go to this place. So I always liked that consulting. Like I get to work with so many different companies. I get to have such a larger impact. I get to meet so many different people, and that's why consulting was always so attractive to me. I had done the internal HR role, but I really wanted to challenge myself and work with like five different companies and learn five different cultures and learn five different sets of benefits, policies, compensation. Because I will tell you, one of the most wonderful things, and I can say this with certainty, if you get a good consulting role that pushes you, you will, it's like 3 years of experience in 1 year. Because when you're with one organization, you're really only learning what they're doing, and you might not get challenged or be able to do certain things in that one organization because maybe they never do a compensation analysis. Everything is the way it is. But when you're consulting with multiple companies, it's like, okay, they need a compensation analysis. They're working on a performance review. They're working on a redoing their culture. They're working on a system implementation. So the learning curve is amazing. And if you like that challenge, I would highly encourage you to look for consulting roles because you get to learn. I'm not even exaggerating. You learn so much in such a short time period. So this hands-on experience geared towards compliance and engagement. Compliance is a huge HR factor. It's always going to be part of it. You're going to have to abide by the law. I always think it's funny where everyone talks about like, especially in Georgia, they're like, oh yeah, we don't really like to get into California or New York because the laws are so difficult. And I'm like, I'm from New York. They're not that difficult because I grew up in it. But that's just my perspective because that's all I'm used to. And California, yes, definitely a challenge. There's definitely a lot of things that change very frequently, so you have to be on top of that. But I like a challenge, and a challenge is good and it pushes you. And a challenge in that perspective, it means that other people are going to be scared of it. And if you like the challenge and you run towards it, you can find much more work and many more clients because you're versed in something that other people are afraid of, where it's like, oh, I go up against another HR consulting firm, like, oh, you have employees in California, we're not going to touch it. And I'm like, I'll do it. I've done it before, done it multiple times. I know how to do it. So I think that's a really important piece of why something I want to convey is that if it's hard and other people don't want to do it, that's what you should be doing. There is a market for that. There is a way for you to make a living and enjoy your life off of that because somebody else doesn't want to do it. And again, most things are not fun the first time you do them. So you have to embrace the challenge that goes with that. So a lot of what I do is ultimately aligning HR principles towards business goals, towards profitability. I think that's a huge thing in my sector that I've come to find that people who are like overly compliance ignores the engagement portion of it, they're not really striving towards profitability goals because they don't understand that. And I understand how a business runs because of some of my experience that I have. So being able to help somebody's organization and help them, drive towards, hey, I am, your true partner in this, not just your consultant, and building true relationships with these people where you truly value them as people and as humans and how you can ultimately make their life better. Again, still abiding by those original principles of psychology, to do no harm and make the world a better place. So a lot of what I do goes right back to that org behavior course I talked about, that project on, where I'm driving behavioral change with leadership so that there's a better place to work. Because I always say that we are spending, I don't know, honestly, we're spending 70 to 80% of our week either at work, dealing with work, or doing something with work. And it should not be the most miserable thing we have to do. So I like to go to organizations, and if there are organizations where I'm going for a new consulting and I go, how does this look, or is this something that's important to you? If it's not a fit, I will tell them, hey, there are other people that I can refer to you that I know very well, but this is kind of what I do and the way I do it. And I've really started to lead towards what my differentiating factor is in the HR consulting space. What is my differentiating factor? It's that I'm an IO psychology practitioner. So I've started to lead my conversations with I am an IO psychology practitioner that works in HR consulting. So I take the principles of IO psychology, trying to make the world, a workplace, a much better place, either from an efficiency perspective, from an employee behavior perspective, all these different things. Is a huge differentiating factor. So understand there was a time in my life where I really questioned after getting the degree, was this the wisest decision I made? Would it have been better off I spent that money someplace else? And if you've ever questioned it, it's fine. I've done it too. I can promise you I've done it. But it will, sometimes you get a return immediately and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So the other thing I have on this slide is that I am SHRM certified. I'm more than happy to talk about that with anybody who really is like, is it worth it to get this certification? Is it something I want to do? So I am senior certified, so it's the more higher level certification. Honestly, one of the reasons it just really works for me is another differentiating factor. When other people or I'm bidding against somebody else and it's a CP versus an SCP or they don't have a certification, it gives you credibility. But understand SHRM as a business. So if that is something that you're looking into, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you. I don't want you to be scared because I absolutely freaked myself out about that exam last year. And then when I passed it, I like broke down because I couldn't believe it. Because at the time I was battling like long COVID symptoms, and I couldn't think straight and all these other things. So when I finally passed the exam, I was like, oh my God. And it was funny because I spoke at the Chicago PSYOP, and when I'm sitting at the airport waiting for the plane to come, I'm literally reading through the books that I had for this certification, know that the test was coming up in a month. So again, if that's something you want to look, again, don't be afraid of those challenges. Go after those things. These are the things that differentiate you. And I think one of the concerns, and I hear this a lot, people will go, is it worth it to get the master's or is it worth it to get SHRM certified? Honestly, it depends. If you really have an interest in IO psychology and you really like, yeah, I see Lee laughing because that's like the universal IO psychology. Yeah, it depends. But there's two things about this. Once you get an education, that is something that nobody can ever take away from you, especially if you learn how to utilize those skills. And the certification, there's a lot of things that I learned that I leverage now. And it has helped me a lot in my career and really helping me to take the next step and just gain more credibility within the work I do. So again, if you have conversations about that, please, for the love of God, send me a LinkedIn message. More than happy to talk about my experience with it. Don't want you to freak out about it. So that brings me to this lovely slide from the movie, Inception. Sorry, had a little brain fart there. But there's a scene where Joseph Gordon-Levitt pulls out a little handgun, and the whole concept of Inception is if you dream it, you can have it in your hand as part of the dream. So he pulls out a little handgun and he's trying to, battle off these bad guys. And that's where Tom Hardy says in his sexy English accent, you mustn't be afraid to dream a little bit bigger, darling. And then he pulls out a rocket launcher and blows these people up because he decides to dream bigger than him. And I think for the longest time, I was always so scared about going out on my own and owning my own business because it was this fear of the unknown. What if I do this? What if I fail? What if there are so many of those thoughts going on. But when you get to a certain point in your life and in your career with what you're doing, you have to have a little bit more faith in yourself and understand how far you've come and how much of what you've done in spite of all the obstacles. So with that, I launched Heroic HR Partners on March 1st of this year. I had this idea. So I talked about that whole book reading habit. I really started adopting that at around like November-ish because I didn't have a name at the time. And I really wanted to figure out what that name was going to be. So I was like, I know how I'm going to do this. I'm just going to read as much as I possibly can. And then there's going to be a word that pops out to me, and that's the word I'm going to do. And I had been working on a project where the term heroic had come up. So I wrote it down on a piece of paper. And then I had read another book. I think it's called The Hero Effect. And it's a book. It's like a 100-page book. It's a great read, and it really talks about how we can go above and beyond in whatever we're doing to create this hero effect. And I kept playing around with what I wanted the logo to look like. So I do have the original, if you've seen my LinkedIn post, I do have the original like logo that I wrote down on an envelope. This is where the original concept came from. And then I had ran it by a graphic designer that I worked with because I really wanted something that stood out and really meant something. And it's something that I want it, as I add employees to my organization, I want it to be something that they are proud to represent. And I might have a second business of just putting that logo on a t-shirts because I can't begin to tell you how many HR professionals I've met at a conference and they're like, I love that logo. How do I go about getting that? And if you're thinking about stealing it, I'm already going through the process of trademarking it. So you're too late. Um, but so many fun things come out of it. And there's so many different concepts that I've had for this logo. And a lot of it just really originates in the IO space about doing things to help people because that's ultimately why we do it. So I went from, again, working for an HR consulting firm to founding this business. So again, I founded the business. We're supporting small to mid-sized businesses. That's kind of where my niche is because I do a lot of fractional HR work. So fractional HR is basically small to medium-sized business. They don't need a full-time HR person, but they do need senior level HR support. So what they might be able to afford might be somebody a little bit more junior in their career. And they're taking on things that might be a little bit above their head. I can say that because I've done it myself. And if you want me on like a project basis, cool. More than happy to help another HR professional who is more junior grow into their career and start learning whatever process it is that they're doing. Or if you wanted me to take it all on, that's cool too. That's something that I'll do. So again, coming back to focused on culture, compliance, and leadership. Because within that right now is that I'm starting to look into leadership coaching, which again is another skill that I learned from IO psychology, that if I was just going for a master's in HR, not knocking it, but that's not a skill that they might have developed. So you have to really understand all those different tools that you got in your tool belt when you went and got that degree in IO psychology. I mean, you learn the different processes in performance review, and we talk about like performance review, and then we talk about 360s. Like 360 is a great basis to use for a leadership coaching session because it's real-time data that you can collect from peers, direct reports, managers that you can help coach somebody and help them develop in their career. Also leverage your knowledge about the organization's culture and say, where is there a misalignment between this person and the culture? And how do we get them back in line with the culture? Because a really good HR function, and we're talking about like HR function, I'm talking about onboarding, offboarding, employee relations, performance reviews, corrective actions, even. If you leverage your values into any of those processes, I'm telling you right now, it's a game changer. Because when you go to have that uncomfortable conversation about corrective action for an employee, if you could just say, hey, you violated this value of our organization. Can you understand why that's not in line with the way we do business? It really simplifies that down. And I will also tell you, when you go to unemployment hearings, the DOL will not give you a hard time about it because you're able to say this is a core business principle of our organization. We have it written all over the wall. They violated it, and it's so much easier to go through that. But if you're doing that before, you might not ever have to go to those DOL hearings. So some of the key takeaways that I really want to focus on is like the first value you will always see for my organization, and it's something that I always talk about, is integrity is the foundation of HR, but it's also the foundation of so many other things. If you're trying to do the right thing most of the time, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Well, if you're the tree that falls in the forest and you don't know what to do, if you just do what's based on integrity, you're always going to pretty much make the right decision. Also, that's a key hint on any SHRM exam is never do the unethical thing because that's always the wrong answer. So, promise you that. So that's a little tidbit snuck in there. When you're really talking about culture, I've consulted with clients where it's like I want to outsource my culture to like a director of people in culture, and this is coming from a senior leader. That's not a thing. If you're the senior leader, you have to be part of the culture. You have to further the culture. You have to keep it going. You like, but that's the beautiful thing about it. You get to decide what you want that to look like. And that's a lot of responsibility, but if you do it the right way, it really helps to make your organization a much better place for people to work and a much better place for people to coexist outside of work. So HR needs to be human and data driven, and because I've heard this so many times that HR is is not a is not really human or a resource. So I get that. I always called it 1970s HR, where people didn't want to do, like where they want to do things the old school way. I was like, yeah, that's not the way that things are going need to go. Honestly, one of the reasons I got into HR was that I was not a fan of the way that things were being run. It did need a lot of help, and it still does. But I always find it funny that I work with clients and you're like, you're not like any of the other HR people I've ever worked with. I'm like, good, I'm not trying to be. I'm trying to do things differently than what you've experienced. I've started with new clients and I was like, look, if you're scared to talk to me, I apologize for whoever you've worked with in the past because I'm not the boogeyman. I'm actually here to value you as a person. And it's really important to me that like, if you have goals in life, I'll help you achieve those. And I think it's a great factor when we think about how beautiful it could be if we could say the employee has run their course with us, they've elevated themselves to a new level. And if we don't have a position for them, we wish them well. But at the same time, they could always come back at another time. So that's why you never burn that bridge with people. So it's so important to look at those things as you're navigating your career in either HR or IO. And honestly, just the last one is strategy plus empathy equals results. So if you use strategic methods, I'm thinking really OD concepts, and then the empathy, which is you name it, social psychology, any sort of psychology where we want to show empathy towards others. That's kind of the most important way to honestly drive results because you get a lot of credibility with every employee within the organization. And I think it's important while you're navigating through what that looks like, especially on consulting engagements, because I will tell you, um, I go on site to multiple clients. I don't dress the same at every single client because if I were to overdress, I wouldn't be able to get credibility when everyone else is wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And that's part of that culture too, is that, look, this is, if you want to fit in, this is what we wear here. And then I have another client where it's like, we are a little bit more on the business casual side. So you're going to have to wear dress pants and a dress shirt, no ties, no jackets, but you gain credibility that way. I had taken an OD course with Alan Landers a couple years ago, and he always said that he had worked on a consulting engagement where he walked in and he had like these fancy $500 dress shoes and he had to go and buy cowboy boots because otherwise they weren't going to take him seriously. And I'm telling you, these are little things that you don't think about, but I'm telling you, the credibility portion is so important. So like, think about that. If everyone's wearing cowboy boots, I might have to go buy a pair. I don't want to, but that might be what has to happen. So I believe that's kind of where the end of this comes. If you'd like to have any more conversations about that, I promise you, if you reach out to me, I might be busy, but I promise you I will get back to you as long as you're just not trying to instantly sell me something. Because I get a lot of those now that I'm a business owner. I get a lot of those now. But you can reach out through my email. You check out my website. It's pretty cool. And then you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with IO psychology professionals. I could talk about it all day. As you could tell, I am not short of wind. I could talk quite a bit. But at this point, I'd like to see if there's any questions out there, anything that I can help answer to anybody out in the audience.
I guess I just want to know how it's been going since you launched.
Well, good question.
Yeah.
So I've been profitable since day one. I had a book of business that I stepped into immediately, which was really, really a great thing. I had worked previously with clients who really liked the work I was doing and really didn't want to go in a different direction. So that was something that came in with negotiations. So again, I've been profitable since day one. Um, a lot of what I'm doing now is networking based and building relationships with COIs. So the centers of influence in the HR space is always going to be like payroll vendors, employment attorneys, benefits brokers. I'm also a licensed Georgia state broker to do life accident health. I don't really do it. I could do it, but it's good when I get into a conversation with a benefits broker and talk about things is that, okay, I do know a little bit about this to be dangerous enough. So if you are not telling me the truth, I can kind of see that. So there's these little things that you can do that, yes, there's a time commitment for it, but like you can become a licensed broker in your state for benefits. In one of the first interview I had for the last consulting firm that I was with before I started, they asked me, what is it that you don't like within the field of HR? And I said, it's not that I don't like it. It's just I don't necessarily feel comfortable in the benefit space. They said, great. You're going to go become a licensed broker, and then you're going to become comfortable with it because you're going to have to learn everything. So that was, I look back at it, that kind of was crappy, but at the same time, it served me so well. So again, I come back to this, don't be scared of those things. Like take the chance. The worst that happens is it just you have to do it again. As long as you never stop and just keep going, there's no such thing as a failure. So I think that's an important aspect of it. So so far business is good, but still like more. So any other questions
Did
that I can?
did you do you have a business plan or anything like that that you used?
So a lot of what I did, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. So a lot of what I did was kind of based off the experience of what I had done prior. So I kind of understood within the business process that um, good referral partners are these types of people from the spaces I just talked about. So a lot of it was, okay, I'm going to step out. A lot of this is just taking a chance and trying to see like where we can go with certain things. It's not a guarantee. So when you are going into the consulting space, um, I will tell you there is uncertainty through it. But at the same time, you have to figure out what your differentiating factor is. So when I really started to lean into my differentiating factor being honestly, the first thing that comes to mind from my location is that I'm from New York and I'm in the South. And it's just a different pace because I can tell you anecdotally, several times I've worked with clients where they'll go, it'll be 11 o'clock on a Monday, and they'll go, hey, we're working on this. Can you have this done by Friday? And I was like, Friday? I'll have it done by 2 o'clock. What do you mean Friday? Like I don't have time to let that sit on my plate so that I can let five other things pile up. So that's a lot of what my differentiating factor was. And at the same time, like I've started to go out and when you go to these networking events, you do your sales pitch. And my sales pitch is that I'm an IO psychology practitioner in HR. I said, when you work with other HR professionals, they do it a very different way, but I look at it from a much more holistic perspective of how do we grow your organization? How do we get your systems in place and in line with the things that you want to do? And I think that's one of the more exciting things about like how you differentiate it. So when you are going through that business plan, it's what clients do you want to target? And again, I'm not I've worked in a lot of different industries. I think when I first got into it, I would be faced with a new industry, and one of the ones that came up was I started working at physician's practice of specialty physician's practice in a doctor's office. It's like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in over my head. And then I got in there. I'm like, oh, you have the same problems as everyone else. It's just you have a business revenue cycle instead of a monthly billing, and you have to wait for certain things to go through insurance before you get paid on it. So I think a lot of that is there's nothing wrong with specializing in a certain field. Honestly, I wouldn't be against specializing in doctor's offices just because I understand it very well. But then I feel like I'd be missing out with a lot of different other organizations where I like to like naturally I like to learn a lot of different things. So, you know, I've worked in 3D printing companies. Um, I work for an interior design firm. I worked for a company that did like mass marketing, but really focused on the multifamily housing. That's like a whole market that I didn't know about. I actually worked for a company that did multifamily housing. I started a list, I think last week, where I was writing down all the different organizations I was working with. And I was like, I can't remember what that company was called, but I worked with them. So that's one of the reasons why I really do like consulting is just if you have a natural thirst to learn more, it's such a good role for you, and it's so well versed. And again, like I said, the learning curve speeds up so quickly because when you're working with one organization, they might only do one thing that year that's a little bit different, and then you're just kind of going through the motions. Whereas you work with multiple organizations, it's like, oh, okay, we're going to do work on this, and then we're going to work on that. And that other client that I'm working on is doing this, and this other client's doing that. So you really get a vast experience that really speeds up that learning curve. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank everyone for joining tonight. If you came in late or you missed it, Lee, you said that you would post it on YouTube towards later this week. So if that's something they want to check out, um, highly recommend it.
Hey, Brennan.
Hey, Anthony, how are you?
Good. How's it going? I actually do have a question.
Okay.
So I like the premise for this talk, definitely moving from theory into practice, and your sort of all of your experiences how they culminated into that. I think one image comes to mind is like I don't know, you're on like sort of a spinning wheel. Everyone's on it, and where's your jump off point? Where do you find all this thirst to collect all this knowledge? It comes in different ways, different forms. When's the eventual point, I guess, in sort of sense, or how do you find or know when to find your way, or how do you find your way sort of to jump off and move into that practice point and applying those theories? How have you found that sort of to go?
So is that specifically about leveraging it, or is this also about like me stepping out to start my own company?
It can be leveraging it, and if it also applies to that as well, yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I bring that up is that I think when I decided to go out on my own and really wanted to take that, it's the natural change model. It was the pain of remaining the same was far greater than the pain of what could be. So I was like, I don't want to keep doing this and not know what this would look like. And I think a lot of that while you're going into the theory, it's don't be afraid to do certain things. Like I've always talked a lot about, I always screw this up. I think it's Kirkpatrick's theory on training and development. And it's the hybrid form where we're talking about we want to get to level 4 or level 3. And honestly, one of the first, this actually worked out really well for me is I was doing an internship while I was going to school. And I got to sit on a webinar with the Kirkpatrick family that still does the consulting in the L&D space. And they talked about how there's ways to get that hybrid, get people to start thinking about what the obstacles are going to be and how they're going to be able to leverage it and use it in the future. And it's something that always stood out to me as like that can be applied to so many different things, not just training and development. So it's honestly like when you're going into, I just use like a like performance sort of thing. It's that it's starting to build toward that training, but if it's like if you're doing a really good performance review, you should be tying the goals for that organization, for that person in the performance review towards profitable, profit driving outcomes. And that's actually able to help you further your business. I think way too many people use performance reviews to check the box. This person did this, and this way, if it ever comes up, and well, did they have a good performance review before you terminated them, or did a lot of those things? And this is me talking from the HR space, because that's a lot of what they do in HR. It's we want to do the performance review, so we say check the block, check the box, and we're compliant. But when you really start to get creative about it and use the theory behind it towards, we want to do some adult learning theory, find out what people are naturally want to be more curious about in the work that they're doing, and then ultimately build that into what their next year with the organization looks like. It can be leveraged incredibly well. So I wouldn't be afraid to do some of those things while you're doing it to try to figure out, like, again, I always go back to that theory on how do we get to step 3 or level 3 of how do we get overcoming those obstacles, getting this person to do these things. And that's training and development, but it's a behavioral thing. So I do a lot of different OD principles as well. Honestly, the biggest OD principle is in, again, going back to that OD certificate I did with Alan Landers. We created our own model in the certificate program. And if you do not communicate, your model is a failure. If your model is not have like communication all around it, different channels, like you're going to fail change management, and you're going to fail in any sort of strategic thing, because the entire point is to get buy-in to people. And I love to use this because it's so true. I've worked with organizations before that don't like to communicate things. And I always go, oh, don't worry. Things are being communicated. You're just not controlling the narrative anymore. So it's probably better off that you over communicate and control the narrative so that you can catch, like, a Debbie who goes down a rabbit hole that the reason why that they didn't do this, this, and this was because we're all losing our jobs and all these other things. So stop those things before they happen by communicating. So I hope that helps to answer your question. I hope I didn't go off on a tangent. Okay. So any other questions before we kind of wrap this up? All right, I'm going to go back to Sharon's slide deck. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here. So Lee, if you want to talk about the next webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan, and really appreciate this. I mean, I love chatting with you anyway, but very informative. I love the way you put all that together. So yes, everyone, you see there, James Castleberry is going to be doing our next webinar next month, talking about psychometric tools. He uses that in his coaching practice. He also does some training. So if you are interested in that, he does do that as well. So please come on and check that out, June 17th, because if you don't know, this is always the third Tuesday of the month is when we do this. Also, just one last thing, when you log out of Zoom, it will open a browser window with a survey in it. I ask that you please take a moment to answer that survey. It's only a few questions, but those answers help us when we bring in the speakers, because we want to bring in what you guys want to learn about, because that's what the whole point of this is. So please take a moment to answer that. We really appreciate that when you do that. I think that's about Pam. Anything to add before we wrap this up?
I don't believe so. Just want to say thanks, Brendan. I appreciate hearing everybody's journey, because there's always something, even me, I can learn from what you guys, figure out and learn as you go. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, and like I said, anybody who'd like to connect, learn more, talk more about anything that I talked about, I'm pretty open about it. So I'd love to talk to you and kind of help you down your journey as much as I can. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you again, Brendan. Thank you so much. That concludes our session for this evening. So if you did like this and want to share it with others or watch it again, it will be posted to our YouTube channel later in the week. We'll probably drop that on the post for this on LinkedIn. So if you didn't grab that earlier, or just message one of us, we'll be happy to share it with you. So anyway,
Yep, absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and I wish you all a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks.